What's up? Welcome to Cutting Edge podcast. I'm your host, C.S. Joseph, and this is the February 2021 episode. And we're going to be discussing the thin red line between the concrete and the abstract. So, this has been an interesting topic. A lot of people have a lot of issues relating to this topic because of how oftentimes abstract people, also known as intuitives, who make up only literally 30% of the population of the planet, oftentimes have, they are basically treated like this insane psychological minority, which leads to a certain amount of persecution. Which can be, a big deal. There is a primary source of information that we are using for today's podcast, and that is going to be Ion by Carl Jung. Ion is probably the absolute most important work that I maintain that Carl Jung wrote. Thank you, Karen Sue, for making sure that I read it and did some additional research on that. Thank you also, Mr. J. Ackley, for supporting that research by also diving into the book as well. Obviously, there's other books that Carl Jung wrote where he's talking about cognitive senses and defining those cognitive senses. And cognitive senses are essentially cognitive functions. And I would maintain his book about personality type or cognitive senses, his written works relating to that content is also very important, but none so as important as Ion, which is Aion. The reason why is that the first 5 chapters of Ion actually lay down the groundwork for four sides dynamics, also known as the 4 sides of the mind. And we would not actually be able to come to an understanding of the 4 sides of the mind until actually reading this book, specifically the first 5 chapters. Although his nomenclature is not exactly accurate, but that's because I updated his nomenclature because it makes a lot more sense, and borrows a little bit from Freud's nomenclature because Freud is actually somewhat generally accepted as like the dude in the psychological community, because psychology, apparently you can't create a business of psychology without psychiatry, and you can't have psychiatry without Freud, apparently, or at least that's what the American or Western societal education institutional system would have you believe. But we all know that's complete and utter bullshit. So we could actually just move on from that, and who cares? So great. So anyway, the premise for today's podcast being Ion by Carl Jung. Mr. J. Ackley did us the honor of posting something interesting in the C.S. Joseph public Facebook group, where he said, quote, Carl Jung wrote, quote, "One cannot dispose of facts by declaring them unreal," end quote. And I think this is very important because within the context of of Ion, etc., that has a lot more outstanding ramifications for today for us, concerning society and whatnot, because right now we have, as I've discussed here on this podcast in the past, psychological racism, psychological prejudice, basically, where certain minorities of mental faculties and capabilities and aptitudes, etc., those minorities are basically persecuted by society at large. And there's a lot of different minorities. In fact, there's you can actually, every single one of the 16 types, regardless of gender, regardless if abstract or concrete, regardless of temperament, in some way, shape, or form, is basically a minority of which society is prejudiced against. The difference is that, and yes, I am purposely wearing my Einstein shirt right now for this because I'm actually going to be talking about Einstein during this presentation. But it's important to note that every single one of the 16 types has some kind of minority presence, although some of the 16 types have more minority prejudicial positions, or positions from which they could be prejudiced against by other people, where other people have the opportunity to be prejudiced against those people more so than others. That's true. But it doesn't matter. In each particular case, there is a form of minority somewhere, somehow. For example, intuitives are a minority because they are the abstract types, and abstract types make up 30% of the population, whereas 70% of them are concrete. That's one such minority. There is a minority in terms of women being STP or NTJ types. Those are the most masculine of the 16 psyches, basically, and those women are a minority in there. There is a male minority in terms of the more feminine psychological types, which are the Crusader types, specifically. SFJs and NTPs, they're very feminine, and men end up so male Crusaders are often persecuted against for being more feminine and effectively being late bloomers and not developing their masculine traits till later in life, etc. And they start off with their feminine traits, etc. That can also be a problem. You could be, so certain types with your gender affects it. Certain temperaments are not as common. Certain functions themselves are not as common. For example, anti-hero is the rarest function out of all of the functions within that particular cognitive attitude. It's extremely rare. So that's a problem. The same thing with anti-hero. So there's another aspect of a minority, psychological minority, that can be, persecuted or prejudiced against by society as we know it. And the thing is that this really goes to show that, like I podcast, that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter your culture. Every single human being, because of cognitive projection, is prejudiced, is racist. Everyone. To the point where prejudice and racism, I actually maintain, is a biological survival trait. And while, yes, you can be conditioned to be racist, I think it doesn't matter when you look in terms of the 16 types, because you will be prejudiced just off of cognitive projection alone until you actually understand what cognitive projection actually is, and you understand that there are psychological minorities and which of those psychological minorities do you belong to, and that there are people who belong to more psychological minorities than you may belong to, etc., and how that works. All of that is very necessary in understanding. Because if you don't understand that, well, guess what? By default, with your natural ignorant inclinations, you will be racist. You will be prejudiced, essentially, and whether or not you're aware of it or not. So the point is that I'm saying that it is natural for humanity to be racist. It is natural for humanity to be prejudiced. And it's only through enlightenment or gaining wisdom or gaining knowledge that humanity does not become racist or prejudiced. But it is their natural yin state. And only adding in the yang state through gaining knowledge, gaining wisdom, gaining enlightenment, etc., the knowledge pyramid, similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have data at the bottom, and then the next level is information, and then the next level is knowledge, and then the next level is wisdom, and the top level is truth, etc. And the knowledge pyramid, etc. Following out that model, well, if people are just being ignorant and they only have access to the data and the information, they're going to draw their own default conclusions, and those default conclusions always lead to prejudice, and they always lead to racism in some capacity. And that's normal. That's a thing. And there's not really much we could do about that at all. So this is a really important thing to note, because it's so easy for each of the 16 types to declare someone else's perspective as invalid. I do it all the time to NFPs. I declare NFP perspectives. I also declare FJ perspectives invalid consistently. I probably have the biggest problem with FJs. A lot of people think that I have like a serious problem with NFPs. I really don't. If I truly actually do have a serious problem with types, it would have to be FJs, but most specifically EFJs. I really have a hard time with EFJs. I can handle FE parents pretty well, because FE parents still have to be responsible with their ethics, which is great. But FE heroes leads to this insane arrogance that I really, really struggle with. So I struggle with ESFJs. I struggle with ENFJs because these are the people who adopt social norms and then force everyone around them to follow those social norms, even though they never validated or verified themselves whether or not the social norm is even a good thing or a true thing or an accurate thing to begin with. They just are quick to adopt it and make everybody else live by it, even though they haven't done it themselves. And it's really hypocritical, and I can't stand that. And FJs, all FJs do that, but especially the TI inferiors. And I think this is one of the reasons why, the ESFJ is the conflict type with an ENTP, because, I just absolutely can't stand it. They're telling me that, oh, you're a bad person, you're a bad person, you're a bad person. And I'm telling them, you're a stupid person, you're a stupid person, you're a stupid person, is usually how the argument ends up devolving. Granted, that's not to say that I don't have some good relationships with EFJs out there, because I do. But they're also gotten to the point where they've realized that their TI inferior needs to literally shut up and actually listen when they're around me. And I also need to go out of my way to try to be a little bit more affiliative and do the good thing, etc., and, when I'm around them, and that's fine. But again, it's just how it's just where the rub is in terms of these types and these different minorities and these different approaches. Now that we've discussed that foundation for this episode, we can actually discuss now one of the biggest issues that we've had in terms of minorities is the minority of abstraction. And like I said, the name of this episode is the thin red line between the concrete and the abstract. Abstract people, also known as intuitive types, are a huge psychological minority in the world. And oftentimes it's so funny, like even certain abstract types will sell out other abstract types, because abstract types, the most original of the abstract types are the NPs. And the NPs often begin the process, they begin change, right? Whereas NJs carry out the change. But oftentimes, because NJs have extroverted sensing inferior or extroverted sensing child, they're a little bit closer to the concrete, because extroverted sensing is closer to the concrete instead of NE. NE is closer to the metaphysics. So SE is closer to the yang, and the NE is closer to the yin, even though they're both technically yin functions. And we'll talk about that in a second, how they are yin functions. But because of this, oftentimes NJs end up selling out the NPs to the majority, to the concrete sensors consistently. It's pathetic, and I'm tired of it. And it's especially bad with NFJs. They're the ones who are going to sell out the most, sell out the NPs the most. Because affiliative, because, oh, if it's accepted by the crowd, then it's okay, I recommend, as part of this lecture, you read the book The Madness of Crowds, and we're going to actually be discussing that slowly, throughout this episode, so you guys can kind of get an idea on that as well. So it's a serious thing. But anyway, the thing is that, concrete types are very, very quick to dismiss things being said by abstract types, because concrete types have this perspective. Like if you're a concrete SP, the SP is like, hey, I don't see anyone else doing what you're talking about, so it's not real. Here's an example of that. So I've had STPs in my life tell me, hey, that's great that you read that book, or hey, that's great that you know all these things, but I don't see you actually using it and being successful with it in your own life. Therefore, because my XE can't see you taking action yourself and using it, that tells me that you don't actually value it. And that just tells me that you're just bullshitting me, which means I, as an STP, automatically get to choose to assume that you, Mr. Chase, are bullshitting me, and I get to assume that you're lying to me because you are not practicing what you preach. I automatically, by default, get to arrogantly elect myself as an STP, that you, as a judge, to judge you as a liar, to judge you as a fake, because you claim to know something even though you are not actually actively doing it in your life. Well, I got something to tell you, STPs. You're full of shit. Because guess what? I and actually know something about the content as a result of reading that book. And just because I am not taking action as a result of reading that book right now doesn't mean I don't fucking know what I'm talking about. I'm so tired of that bullshit. Okay, and as Carl Jung would say, one cannot dispose of facts by declaring them unreal. What Carl Jung is really actually saying is, you can't dismiss somebody because you think it's unreal. Like these STPs in my life have dismissed me because it's like, well, you don't care about it because their FE functions, their FE child or their FE inferior is assuming that I read because I'm not taking concrete action, because these STPs automatically assume that concrete action as seen by their experted sensing is the same as intention. When the reality of the situation is, that's not true. That's actually bullshit, because intention and action are two separate things. But just because of their NI inferior and their NI child, because SPs always just assume, these SPs just assume that, oh, because it's something I want to do and I take action, I always want, whenever I take an action, it's because it's something I want to do. That must mean everybody else is psychological minority, because psychological prejudice, because I'm psychologically racist, because I'm a racist SP type. When I assume that everybody else, when they take an action, that means that they are doing it intentionally. Wrong, that's not actually true. But they just assume everyone else is like them because cognitive projection, which means they're fucking prejudiced, and I'm tired of that shit, but they do it all the time. Even my wife does it to me, and that's also frustrating. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they just automatically dismiss it, and they just dismiss because I'm not taking action. Because for them, seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. Or here's another situation. I've always had SPs, all SPs tell me, quote, I'll believe it when I see it, right? I'll believe it when I see it. And this is what Carl Jung is actually pointing out in his... All right, looks like I got the stream back, and I apparently was, on a rant trying to explain what the hell is going on here with some freaking ESTPs. So, in which case, I'm going to continue said rant without even dropping a beat. So ESTPs and ISTPs end up having this bullshit point of view of, I'll see it when I believe it. Seeing is believing. And it's so hypocritical of them to have. It gets even worse. I am married to an ESTP, and she's like, always having this perspective of, well, it's concrete, so it's real. You don't know that's going to happen. That's not even a thing, etc. And I'm like, okay, I'm tired of STPs having this point of view when it comes to seeing as believing. Now let's talk about her perspective, because I actually proved to her recently how unreal experted sensing actually is. So, for example, she was in my home, and she's like, and this is like when we were like just before we were married, and then we became married, and then she just decided arbitrarily one day that she wanted to remove all of my old dishes. And in fact, she wanted to get rid of almost every old thing I ever had. She's like, I don't want you to have this bed anymore. And I'm like, why not? And she says, well, it's because you've had sex with other women on this bed, and I don't want their dirty memories getting on me and whatnot. And I'm like, they're dirty memories, huh? So I'm like, oh, so this plate right here where, my ex-girlfriend and I had pancakes on one time, you can't have this plate because it's been dirtied because of old memories that I've had. And memory is metaphysical, right? Memory is technically an abstraction if you think about it. Other people's memories. It's an abstraction, right? Yet these SE users claim to be concrete. See what I'm saying? Do you guys not see the hypocrisy? Extroverted sensing is able to understand that memories have totems. They could pick up an object. It's called psychometry, where they understand the history of the object and everything this object has ever done, etc. and what this object basically means, and where it's been used, and who used it, and when it was used, etc. And they know that physical objects have history, like my bed, and potentially all the women that I bedded on my bed, or all the women that I had food with on my dishes, or who were in my bathroom, and she couldn't wait to move out of the place that I lived in my apartment and get our apartment with new memories. And that's why she has to have new, literally new everything, so that all of the old memories of people in my past are completely washed away, and it's all just her, etc., because of this metaphysical extroverted sensing bullshit that these SPs have. Right. And she's the one telling me that, I'm unreal. She's the one telling me, I believe it when I see it. She's the one telling me that seeing is believing. No, it's not. Because extroverted sensing itself has a metaphysical, abstract component to it. It's a secondary component, but it still itself has abstraction. Because when you are using psychometry to abstract memories that are attached to physical objects, it's no different. It is a form of intuition. It is a form of abstraction. Okay? And this is how concrete extroverted sensors are literally bullshitting us. They're bullshitting into the intuitive psychological minority. They're the ones telling us that what we're saying is unreal. Yet they're the ones who like to pretend of removing totems because there's memories attached to those totems, when the awareness of memories being attached to physical objects, aka psychometry, is itself an abstraction. They are hypocrites. Okay? The point is, it's not exactly as concrete as they claim to be. Introverted sensing, SJs, however, they have more of a case. They have more of a case of being concrete because they know what it is, because it's what has happened to them. I'm actually going to bring up a conversation that I had with Mr. Chris Taylor recently. And I'm going to read you our conversation that we had because he brought up these points, etc., from an earlier standpoint. So Chris says, quote, I went through Chase's input, process, output, feedback, and this is an ENFP speaking, okay? As far as the judgment functions, TE, TI, FE, FI, and well, I was learning about the perception functions, as I think it's still a matter of input, process, output, feedback, except it's SE, SI, NE, and I. He was making the argument that SE starts first and not expert intuition. And his argument, and I got to give credit where it's due, his argument was, quote, my thoughts on this are the outside world is full of experiences happening to people, which would mean extroverted sensing is the input. From there, SI processes those experiences, and through that, one is able to abstract new possibilities, which is the output. Finally, desire from those possibilities is selected through feedback. I want to get your guys' thoughts, though. Does this make sense, or do I have it wrong? I immediately said that he was wrong. My response, extroverted intuition has to start first. Possibility is not generated from what already exists. What already exists came from what was possible first, right? And Chris is like, well, I want to discuss that with you. Thank you for the correction. And I'm like, well, hold on. Some evidence to point that being true is look at the optimistic functions of the starter types. It's all extrovert intuition. They have any child, they have any hero. With the exception of the ESFP. But the ESFP is able to abstract memory through psychometry, the psychometry of extroverted sensing, to basically intuit the existence of memories being attached to physical objects, which it too is an abstraction. It's not concrete. You see what I'm saying? Oh, and it gets even worse. That's possible because they have TI Trickster. Because from the perspective of the ESFP, anything can be true. Anything can be false. So if they have TI Trickster, it's no wonder that the ESFP will be the least concrete of the sensors. Hence why it's among the starter type interaction style. Oh, yeah. Then I went on to say more. And then he's like, okay, I'll contemplate this. And then Jay's like, you mentioned this in the lecture video within the last few months, as I recall, but I don't remember the specific one. And then I said, it is written, quote, where vision is lacking, the people will perish. That's actually a Bible verse. It's talking about how vision is necessary in order for people to even live their lives. So what I said is that, NE is the input, the process is NI, the output is extroverted sensing, and the feedback is introverted sensing, with the feedback being the most concrete thing of that entire sequence. Why is that? Well, it's because, folks, quote, NE users see it, or they behold it, or they visualize it. So NE users visualize it, NI users try it out, SE users do it, and SI users have lived it. You see? And the fact that the SI users have lived it within that process makes it the most concrete thing. Okay, so this comes from our discussion amongst the the coaching team at CSJ. This is just sharing one discussion with you that we had, and it was an excellent discussion, and I'm glad it was brought up. And yes, you're right. Psychometry is a belief system, which means it's technically an abstraction and not actually concrete, which is hilarious. So because of the existence of psychometry within extroverted sensing, the SPs don't actually have a leg to stand on when they're talking about disposing of facts or dismissing people, because I can just declare it's unreal because I haven't seen it with my extroverted sensing. When they themselves use psychometry to intuit memories on top of physical objects or memory totems themselves, they are hypocrites. So that's really frustrating when they do that. So that's like an example, like from my marriage, to show you exactly how there are metaphysical properties to extroverted sensing. The whole point is that, like, okay, you end up having this problem where SJs, and then you have the any childs of ESJs, any child, which it's optimistic, and it's always talking about philosophies and different possibilities. I actually watched an ESTJ as they got older, with developing their INFP subconscious, really get into the powers of crystals and Reiki, and those things are just belief systems. Those things aren't concrete at all, and they become more abstract as they get older, and I get more concrete as I get older, etc., because my subconscious is concrete and their subconscious is abstract. And again, people are just all hypocrites. So Carl Jung is right. One cannot dispose of facts by declaring them unreal, and it's just absolute bullshit, And I'm tired of it. I'm completely tired of it. So, and we defined real. Real is actual. Real is truth, But let's give the concrete people their day in court, right? Let's give them their day in court. Well, according to the book *Sapiens*, I don't know if you guys read the book *Sapiens*. *Sapiens* talks about the value. Oh, it broke again. Okay, great. I just love how my camera system just decides to break every time. It's horrible. So there's a book called *Sapiens*. It's a brief history of humankind by Yuval Noah Harari, etc. And one of the things that the author of *Sapiens* points out when regarding the human race, etc., is that it's important to note that when you're discussing humanity, the reason why Homo sapiens have the advantage over any other species here on planet Earth, it's quite obvious, and that is because human beings are able to talk about abstractions. They're able to talk about possibilities. The author calls it fictions. And because from the author's point of view, according to his research in history, there is no stories. There is no abstraction amongst Neanderthals. It's literally sensing only. They only care or know what the what is. They don't know about the what if. They are not able to abstract. There is no what if, okay? And because of the lack of the what if, Neanderthals were at a psychological disadvantage to the Homo sapiens. And the Homo sapiens, while they were not as large, they were not as physically strong. The Homo sapiens would be able to use fiction and possibilities and the what if and abstractions to abstract strategies for warfare in order to defeat the Neanderthals. And as a result, Homo sapiens completely annihilated and caused the Neanderthals to become extinct. At least that's according to the author of Sapiens. So what this author is pointing out, that without abstraction, the human race would not be the apex of life here on planet Earth, would not be the apex of evolution, because humanity, out of every single species, and this is one of the things, if not the number one telltale sign between humanity and any other species in the history of this planet, and what truly actually makes humanity sentient, is that humanity's ability to abstract, its ability to create fiction, its ability to ask the question, what if, right? And this is where Carl Jung is just like constantly, going out and being like, hey, one cannot dispose of facts by declaring them unreal. You know what I'm saying? Like, Carl Jung is consistently making that issue. And of course he would, because he's one of those psychological minorities. He's an INTP himself. And as an INTP with his SE trickster using NE parent, he would be consistently told by people throughout his life, especially SPs, that he's weak, he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's constantly being dismissed because what he's talking about is unreal. There's another INTP in history who had that problem, and he was the victim of science being a religion. Science is a religion. How is science a religion? Because science oftentimes follows it's supposed to follow the scientific method. The problem is the scientific method can be twisted. It can be twisted in various ways. You can actually, through confirmation bias, also through observing a possibility or a probability makes it more likely to come true, that scientific truth as well, which is basically a law of quantum physics. I think it's the first law of quantum physics, basically, even though people are like, there's no such thing as the laws of quantum physics, whereas I'm positing, yes, there actually is. But based on if you observe a probability or possibility, you're more likely to make it true, right? And the point is that Einstein, he developed the theory of relativity. He was an INTP. He was derided and demonized by the scientific community for having come up with the theory of relativity because he couldn't concretely prove it. Because the religion, or science as a religion, the religion of science and following the scientific method, means that the only thing that could actually be true is unless you're able to concretely prove it. So what about the things you're able to metaphysically prove, right? And Einstein actually did. He was able to do thought experiments, which were basically metaphysical manifestations within his own mind, using logical thought experiments to literally conclude that the theory of relativity was true. And he presented his theory of relativity. And as a result, he was demonized and derided by the scientific community for having even come up with the theory of relativity. Whereas on October 6, 2020, last year, 3 men who are black hole researchers were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize specifically because they proved Einstein's theory of relativity to be correct. Don't believe me? Go to rt.com, click the search button, type in the word Einstein or the word relativity and hit search, and you will find the articles. There's multiple articles on it there where they have officially confirmed that the INTP, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity, is actually factual. They finally were able to do it. This is no different than those who attempted to prove that the Earth was not flat, right? This is going to be no different when we are able to concretely prove Jungian analytical psychology and the cognitive senses and the 4 sides of the mind and all of that very soon. Right now, we're collecting data on thousands and thousands of people throughout the world with our test at discover.csjoseph.life. And then eventually, it's going to turn into the site engine. And when the site engine releases, and everyone will have full access to the site engine, and we'll have a mobile app and everything with the site engine, everyone will be able to not only type themselves and type other people and share that information and communicate with other people and be able to see, it'll be a whole new revolution of social media and content consumption for the rest of the world to see. And it'll be absolutely fantastic. We'll be able to run reports, do queries and statistics on all of that data consistently on a regular basis, and then we'll finally be able to answer these burning questions and concretely prove that this exists because the patterns are there. The concrete is not pattern recognition in as much as expert intuition, aka the abstract, actually is. Oftentimes people think introvert intuition is pattern recognition. No, it's not. It's not. Because expert intuition connects the dots, whereas introvert intuition just sees a bunch of steps in front of them that they have to follow. It's a pathway. It's a pathway with landmarks. It's a path. It's like a roadmap, basically. It's not connecting the dots. It's more of just following a procedure. That's introverted intuition. The procedure I want to follow to be able to get to my goals and all the milestones. That's introverted intuition, okay? But connecting the dots, that's pattern recognition. That is extrovert intuition. Now, there's technically a form of pattern recognition for extroverted sensing because you can kind of see how things fit together within nature and build things with extroverted sensing and manipulate the physical environment. So there is an aspect of pattern recognition, and yes, I have to agree with that, etc. But overall, true pattern recognition of the what if is extrovert intuition, etc. But again, extrovert sensing is still technically an abstraction because of psychometry. You see what I'm saying, guys? Like, this is the thing. But again, you have science as religion. And then if you combine that with the book, the content of the book, The Madness of Crowds, where people are talking about groupthink consistently, science, or the religion of science, or the scientific community, guess what? It's a cult. It's a religious cult that subscribes to nominalism and reductionism and Occam's razor and the scientific method, when it really is just lazy thinking that leads to ignorance. Because it's like, oh crap, if that really is true, then I might actually have to get up off my duff and actually do some work, right? Because now that we know that Einstein's theory of relativity is true, now that we know that's true, imagine all the technologies that will have to be built based on that principle. Because Einstein literally proved the principle in physics, because we know now it's true. So, it's a thing. It's a thing. People need to understand this, you know. So it gets even worse, you know. This leads to controlled opposition, you know, because science is a religion right now. Because here's the thing, you know, one cannot dispose of facts by declaring them unreal. The scientific community and using the scientific method in quotes and using nominalism and reductionism, also known as Occam's razor, right? Because they're using these tools on a consistent basis, they automatically can just dismiss or dispose of facts just off of that. But I'm here to tell you, the scientific method makes people ignorant. Nominalism makes people ignorant. Reductionism makes people ignorant. Occam's razor makes people ignorant. But you will not see You will see NTJs, but you will see especially STJs use Occam's razor and reductionism and nominalism in the scientific method to make every excuse in the book why they shouldn't learn something, why they shouldn't have to put in any effort to accept whether or not something could be true. And that's how the STJs dismiss things. Because, I'm just going to declare that not real because the scientific method didn't create that. We can't follow the scientific method to recreate that output. Okay, that doesn't mean it's not true. Now, granted, there's a lot of bullshit out there like perpetual motion machines, etc., which doesn't seem physically possible, right? But then you have INTPs with SE tricksters claiming that perpetual motion machines are true, which I don't think they're true. I don't think they're really possible. You could argue that potentially maybe the human being and human beings being a renewable resource, just like electricity is a renewable resource, etc., with solar, right, could be a perpetual, energy machine, but not really technically because it still comes with a source. The difference is that the sun is the greatest source of energy out there, but it too has an expiration date. It's not perpetual. It just it's just output is extremely long form and long term. That's all it is, right? And it's also cyclical. The only true perpetual energy machine out there could technically be the universe itself, as it travels the Ouroboros of all possibility, etc. But hey, Chase, you can't say that, and I automatically get to dismiss you and dispose of your facts that you're speaking because I'm going to declare you unreal because concreteness. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, no, that's not the reality of the situation. Like, yeah, so the scientific method is bullshit. Like, it's bullshit. It's outdated and it leaves no room for abstraction. The scientific method is literally leading humanity, just like Occam's razor is leading humanity down the line of Neanderthalism, and we're losing our fiction. Because without fiction, we will not be the apex species of planet Earth. We have to have fiction. We have to protect the what if on a consistent basis. And that's one of the main points that Carl Jung was trying to make. We have to protect the what if. We have to give the intuitives, even though they are the minority, their voice. We have to give them their day in court, right? But you can't do that. So this is like, and this is what I say, like when it comes to like the COVID-19 vaccines, right? There is more fiction in those vaccines than reality. And it's so interesting when you see the NPs are often derided by society and demonized by society as conspiracy theorists, when the reality of the situation is what they're saying is actually true and proven true later consistently. And the concrete types are just easy to just gloss over that and Occam's razor, most scientific method, and then not care anymore. That's not true. By having controlled opposition in the world, I mean, haven't you guys ever noticed? Like, the Democrat Party used to stand up for the individual, and now it's standing up for corporate interests. Really? The Republican Party used to stand up for corporate interests, and all of a sudden it's supposedly standing up for the individual. What the hell happened? It's controlled opposition. It's fake. It's absolutely fake. Politics is fake. The political spectrum is fake. Economics is fake. It's all fake. This is fake. It's not real. This is not real. This is not a fact. This is not real. It's bullshit. Okay? These are all fake. It's all about, it's an abstraction. Okay? So because of these abstractions, these sensor types, these concrete people, aren't as concrete as they claim to be. They become more metaphysical as they get older, right? They're hypocrites. Well, everyone's a hypocrite, but they're hypocrites, right? And this is how they are hypocritical. So the point is, don't succumb to how the world works. Don't succumb to the world system and the world system's perspective about how, people just, automatically dismiss you because it seems unreal to them. The thing is, though, to an intuitive, the what if is far more real than the what is. But even it's arrogant for anyone to claim that the what is the what is. Because they don't really know what the what is actually is. They don't know what the actual is. Because for a sensing type, for them to actually know what is actual, they don't really know. They don't. In as much as an intuitive wouldn't really exactly know what's possible. Because you could see an expert sensor use psychometry to figure out what was possible or what could be possible. They could see what was possible, right? Because they saw what was possible, the potential memories attached to a physical object via psychometry, then it's like, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You're abstracting there. So you see what I'm saying, folks? It's different. It's completely different. So what you guys, or what anyone, declares as unreal, you probably shouldn't declare it as unreal. You shouldn't dismiss Einstein. Everyone dismissed Einstein's theory of relativity when he first released it. Guess what? After he's dead, it's been proven in 2020. It was officially proven. People got the Nobel Peace Prize for it, okay? It was proven that the Earth is not flat, okay? I guess that means pagan gods are bullshit because, in all the pagan god stories assume that the earth was flat. And if they really existed, they would actually know that the earth was not flat. Therefore, ergo, pagan gods are fake and bullshit as well. And just human constructs and graven images. Idols. They're not real. You see what I'm saying, folks? You have to go out of your way throughout your life to actually verify what it is you actually know. Stop dismissing people. Spend time to actually listen to them. You need to be slow to speak and quick to listen, because otherwise you're going to have your entire life fly by, and then all of a sudden you're going to wake up one day 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, ignorant AF. And then you might have me mocking you from a distance, or somebody else. I'm afraid of waking up at that point in time and being that ignorant. I don't want to be. This is why when people criticize me, I take a moment and be like, well, wait a minute, they might actually be right. I should verify. And if I verify that they're wrong, then I absolutely destroy them, instead of immediately attacking their character on the spot like most people do. Potentially, I would imagine most people within this audience. Don't be that guy, right? So the situation is, it's not a problem. I'm Melissa Walker, and just like how white holes were dismissed, but then later. You see what I'm saying? So people need to understand that the abstraction doesn't matter if you're a sensing type or an intuitive type. All types abstract. Abstraction needs to be respected. Abstraction, or the what if, needs to be protected. And because without it, folks, we will cease to exist as a race. We will cease to exist, and there's nothing we can do about it. We have to have fiction. If you call out somebody for being a conspiracy theorist, you, technically speaking, based on what I'm talking about, it is more likely that you're wrong and they're more likely to be correct. Because without fiction, without the what if, we wouldn't be here. So the burden of evidence of them making a claim is not always on the person making the claim. The burden is also on you to attempt to prove them wrong. And if you can't do that, then you're ignorant, because they're the person who's taking the position of the yang and making a statement, making a stand. And you're the position taking the position of the yin, or entropy, saying, no, that's incorrect. The burden then is for you to prove why they're incorrect, in as much as they have the burden to prove that they're right. But if they're already making the statement that they're right, more than likely they already have satisfied the burden of being correct, or at least to support or prove what they're saying to begin with. And if you're just arrogantly or lazily expecting them to have that already provided to begin with, and you don't have to, because I don't have to listen to that because I can just default to the safe or what is known or Occam's razor, then chances are you're being foolish. Chances are you're being ignorant. Chances are you are perpetuating the problem that Carl Jung was stating within his book Ion. One cannot dispose of facts by declaring them unreal. Anyway, with that being said, let's have a small Q&A session relating to this content, because that's the end of the show. Go ahead and put it in here. Also, read the book None Dare Call It Conspiracy. I think you'd have a interesting time. So, yeah, read that book. It'll really screw with you. Yep, that's right. All those poor Vikings, they don't know what they're talking about. They died for nothing. What intuitive type is the least abstract? Oof. Gosh, I would have to say the least abstract. I think that would be the ENFJ. The ENFJ is probably the least abstract, for sure. Yep, the ENFJ. So, all right, folks, looks like that's it. Thank you all for watching this month's Cutting Edge. So, anywho, and what type do you think Newton was? I have no idea what type Newton was. I never even thought of it. Have a good night, folks. I'll see you guys next month on the Cutting Edge.